What would I be without my traditional sweater? The traditional sweater. You know, I don't have my slippers though. Anyway, that's not the point. I just washed my hair so it looks terrible. I gotta comb it. I'm gonna comb it on video. That's breaking the rules, Philip. You're not supposed to do that. Yes, I'm doing it with my little pick, and I have my own. And you're not supposed to comb your hair that way. You're supposed to go backwards. You know, that's one thing in life. People have rules. They have rules about what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. I'm free. That's the thing. On YouTube, I have freedom. I was thinking about some of the things I had said earlier about designer. I started off the very beginning of the thing about designer inferiority because I was thinking about a place where I was working where I more or less saw that. You know, if rules and laws are designed a certain way, they can make people seem less. Because there's one group of people have a set of rules put on them that another group doesn't have. The other group has more freedom. They're allowed to do more things. They're allowed to be a lot freer. Whereas another group is put under restrictions and more or less on lockdown, so to speak. And so when people look at the situation, they see, well, this group is inferior because they can't think for themselves and they can't do for themselves. No, they can't think for themselves because they're not allowed to. If they do, if they make an independent choice, they'll get punished. If they make a decision on their own, they'll get punished in some way. You know, a lot of times the rules aren't necessarily rules like Congress type rules or state legislature rules, but they're social rules. One group of people, a person from a certain group walks into a store and they're going to be followed and looked at, and everything they do is going to be scrutinized. Like one time I went to a store. I went to this particular store. I won't name the store. And I think they actually went out of business, maybe because of this incident. But I went to a record store, and there was this guy following me everywhere I went. You know, at first I thought, okay, it's just a coincidence. I happen to be over in this section, and maybe he likes jazz. And I'm over here at classical music, maybe he likes classical. Then I'm over here in the rap section, he's over there. Every time, and it was obvious the guy was following me. He worked for the store. He's monitoring to see if I'm going to steal something. And I'm just thinking to myself, what is up with this? You know, you feel uncomfortable. Ever since then, I walked out of that store, I said, okay, forget it. I will never go to that store again. And I haven't, actually it was about 5 years before I finally went back into that store. It's like, okay, after a while, I'm just going to let it go. Then something like that happened in another store, a bookstore, which I won't name. That store is still in business. But the guy, I had my book bag with me, and he said I had to check it at the counter. Okay, fine. If that's the policy and everybody's doing it, fine. But I noticed that every other customer in that store didn't have to do it. It was only me. Now, I'm not going to, I try to keep a lot of details out of this story because I don't want to make all kind of accusations that everybody makes all the time. But it's just this thing. When you get treated a certain way because you belong to a certain group and people single you out for more scrutiny, for more, you know, monitoring, that they have to watch everything you do and you have to account for everything you do and you have to explain everything you do. Whereas people from another group don't have to do that. They don't have to explain things. They can just do what they want to and feel free to go wherever they want to, and nobody's going to, you know, bother them about things. You know, and you don't have to face the possibility of being arrested. I remember when I was a kid, and me and some friends of mine, we were in the store. We basically were conducting ourselves in a very nice manner. And these guys just sort of decided that we stole something. They were so certain we stole something. They checked our pockets. We didn't have anything. And I remember one of them, they took us and we went to the police station and everything. And they said, well, let's just charge him with disorderly conduct. It's just like he just made that up out of the blue. You know. I remember that. I remember them putting handcuffs on me. I was about 11 years old. Those handcuffs were so, I was so skinny, the things are actually hanging off me. I could have easily slipped out of them. But they put us in the back of a paddy wagon, like as if we were just criminals. And they just made up a charge. Ever since then, it made me always question people in positions of authority and power, to wonder about them. You know, that they just can decide something. And they can single out one group for mistreatment. This could be across any type of lines, not just race lines, but it could be, you know, because some people have a certain sexual orientation, because some people practice a certain religion. You know, people just label people. If they're from this religion, they're terrible. That's why this whole religious thing has been on my mind. Because I know people who are Muslims. I know people who are Buddhist. I know people who are atheists. People who are Christian. People who are every group you can think of. And for people to just say, well, if you're an atheist, for example, you're a person who doesn't care about anything. You believe in killing and murdering and everything else because you don't have a God to answer to. Or if you're a Muslim, you're a terrorist. You're going to blow up something and bomb something and everything else. If you're a Christian, you believe in, like, you know, doing like in the Inquisition or something like that, or whatever stereotypes people come up with. You know, the people in power can single out that group for a certain kind of treatment, restrict that group. You know, they can say, well, if you're Jewish, we have to put you in this certain area and restrict you, and you can't get this type of job, which is what they were doing, you know, during the time of Hitler, and even before then. You know, it's interesting. I remember reading something about, you know, how, you know, during World War II, the Jews had to wear the Star of David thing to distinguish them. But that actually goes back further than World War II. It goes back even further than that, when they were doing that, singling out one group. You know, if you remember in the Merchant of Venice thing, where the Jews had to, like, have these red hats to distinguish them from the other groups. Basically to be distinguished so they could be treated less and restricted in what they could do. Yeah, you can design people to be inferior by denying them opportunities, by denying them access to things, by denying them access to education and things like that, and by monitoring them and making, and basically, without it even being law issues, but do everything in your power to make them feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. And this is the type of thing, sometimes the racisms and the sexisms and the other isms and every other thing you can think of can be subtle. Or they can be just blatant. They can be the legal types where it's by law. In the United States, there are very few laws that are against people in a direct sense, but there's a great deal of cultural things. Yeah, there are some laws out there in some states, but it's more of a culture thing. It's more of a making this or that group feel unwelcome. You know, for reasons that have nothing to do with anything that's rational. You just associate them with something that you have imagined that they would do. You imagine they're going to hurt you, or they're going to harm you in some way, or they're going to damage your world, or destroy you, or bring you down in some way. You imagine it. And so you act on purely what you're imagining, and not on anything you've observed. It's not based on empirical evidence. It's just based on pure imagination and fear and ignorance. And that's all I have to say.